Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Movie Mates video. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. On today's episode, we are going back to our Overdue review series where we're reviewing films that we missed during our break over the last couple months. And on today's episode, it's a pretty big one because it is the latest Christopher Nolan release, Tenet, which I heard a lot about this. We've talked about the trailer and stuff on the channel before in a couple podcasts, but we're finally getting around to review it today. What were your thoughts about this film, buddy, beforehand? Like, were you hyped for it? Because I know you're maybe not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, but what was your ideas going in?
Yeah, I look forward to it. As a general rule, I like time travel stuff, provided it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely,
Mm.
100%. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, my history with Christopher Nolan films is a bit iffy. I don't think the Dark Knight trilogy is anything particularly spectacular. Uh, I imagine you probably disagree.
I,
I know you
I,
like
I like two of
you like
them.
the Dark Knight.
I like to, yeah.
And why?
I'm not a huge
Which
Batman
is the
Begins
one you
fan.
don't like?
Batman Begins, not huge on. I know that's probably the one you like the most, maybe. I,
Oh,
I
really?
feel. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Batman Begins. I don't know. But no, I do like his
Yeah,
films
obviously,
generally.
obviously the I think the Joker is obviously the best villain, but I think the best film is Batman Begins.
That's fair. That's fair enough. But yeah, this is another. This is probably. I think this film is the most successful film of the year, box office wise. I suppose that, which isn't hard given that like barely any films have released. But I think this movie did reasonably well, even despite the box office, or sorry, despite the pandemic going on. But yeah, latest Christopher Nolan film, pretty big, probably one of the biggest films of the year. So I'm glad to be getting around to it with you. And yeah, just before we kick off, thanks to everyone who supported us recently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Tenet down below if you've seen it. We'd love to hear them. And I suppose it's going to be full spoilers, mate. Is it?
Did you want to split it into non-spoilers first
Yeah,
and then spoilers
absolutely, mate.
after?
Absolutely. Any opening remarks from you?
Well, I think the biggest controversy around this film was the sound quality, and it was sort of the thing that was on my mind going in, because I didn't know much about the plot. I knew there's some sort of time travel mechanism. That was
Yeah,
it. I had no concept of what this story was about, no idea who the characters were.
yeah,
The one thing I had heard is that the sound is a real issue, and honestly, it's loud and it's nowhere near as indiscernible as people say. Like I had absolutely no issues, and my hearing is horrendous. I had the subtitles on, thankfully.
me too.
Because of the home video release, but honestly, I think I could have got by without.
Absolutely. I'd have to agree with you, mate. Like the Christopher Nolan movies, like you can. It's one of the. He's one of those directors where you can immediately realize that this is a Christopher Nolan movie, and I think the sound's one of them. And I'm not sure who did the score for this film. I'm not sure if it was Hans Zimmer or anyone like that, but um, I wasn't actually aware of any of the controversy behind the sound. But I can. It's definitely. It definitely's got a very unique sound to it, a very unique audio quality, that's for sure. But that being said, it was nothing that ruined the experience for me particularly.
Yeah, I mean the sound effect design is somewhat questionable. Anytime there's a fight scene,
Mhm.
it's sort of hard to because of the time travel mechanism, there are plot related issues as to why the sound could be questionable.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe punching sound effects maybe don't land as firmly as they should.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when it comes to dialogue, I heard that was a real issue, and I honestly didn't have a concern with that.
Yeah, that's fair enough, buddy. And one thing about this movie, I don't think I've ever had to concentrate so hard on a film in my life. Like usually, if I'm reviewing a film for the channel, I'll be on my phone for some of it, on the film's Wikipedia page, something like that. Um, and that's me trying to be good. But here, like I couldn't really be on my phone at all. Like I had to really concentrate. And it's weird because like this film, I haven't actually seen Inception, but the action scenes that I've seen from Inception, I would say are quite similar generally to the ones here. Like this film is very unique action that hasn't really been seen and by any other director. Just it seems like Christopher Nolan's quite comfortable with kind of unique action, which is
Yeah,
great.
but love or hate how he makes his films, he's consistent. He
Absolutely.
has like these big high budget like productions, with sort of these weird intricate plots and then like interpretive endings. It is a formula that like he sticks to.
Hmm.
It's just whether you're a fan of it, which
Yeah,
I don't know if you've sensed. I'm not.
that's fair. I can
This film
understand.
was
I can understand.
I hated this film on every level. There's almost nothing I enjoyed about it, and I guess we'll get onto that further in this spoiler review. But
That's really interesting, actually. I'm really
you know,
interested.
if we want to talk about sort of the fundamental building blocks of filmmaking, we've already talked about the sound. If you want to talk about the editing,
Dog shit.
it's pretty shit. You
It
know,
is. It is. No,
I
I'd
don't know
agree
how
with
a
you.
film can be. I don't know how a film can be so long yet like never sit in the moments at the end of the scenes. You know, as soon as the dialogue is over, it's abruptly cut to the next scene. You know, there's no moment to like
There's no
sit and
still
ponder.
shots. There's no still shots at all,
Yeah,
is there? Yeah.
and that could be, oh, he wants to have an appropriate runtime for the amount of story. But the story, I mean, would you say there's too much story or not enough story? Like, I'm so confused because it felt like the longest film I've ever seen, but also nothing happens. But also they could have cut stuff out, and I had a not good time with this film.
I really respect that. I mean, I really respect that, honestly. And it's weird because I'm not going to give anything away here, but generally, because obviously for the non-spoiler, we have to comment on the plot in some regard. So what I will say is, it sort of feels like the film is building up to a really big bad reveal by the end or something, but it's never really it's never really explored in great detail, to be honest with you, as in how the whole time travel element comes across. Really, I mean, there's no real like for me, as the film opened and stuff, I expected it to be sort of like an Edge of Tomorrow kind of scenario, where like by the end of that film, you see the villains and stuff, and you understand what's happening. But at the end of here, it was sort of like I would sort of liken it to like going round a roundabout, but there's no ending, like there's no turn off point. It's just going round and round in circles, and that's really, and I think the editing doesn't help it really. The editing is it's from a Chris Nolan film, like I think that the Batman films are reasonably well edited. This film's just not, is it? It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's not. It sort of upsets me to say, because I expecting it to be great, but I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I find it jarring, but to me, it did come across as though it had like a beginning, middle, and end, even though that's obviously, there's cross complications with, time travel elements within the film. But,
Hmm.
by the end, I was just left thinking like, what's the message?
Oh yeah.
What's the theme?
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
it just seems absent of both. It just seemed like a meandering narrative mess.
That's fair. No, mate, I respect that. I
I
really
I think I
respect
think our
that.
I think our friend Jack, the next time I see him, is probably gonna
Jack's
beat the
gonna
shit
kill
out of
us.
me.
One thing I will say, mate. One thing I will say is like it feels like this film has no, like, I actually really love this film. I actually really love it. But one thing I will say, it feels like it's got no heart or passion. Like with other, that's a really, like, that's probably a really brutal thing to say, but like I didn't really feel like it sort of felt like Christopher Nolan like he felt like he had to make this film because his filmography was getting a bit stale because he hadn't made a film in 3 years, kind of thing. Like, I'm not saying that he didn't put any effort in. Like, obviously, like I think this is some of the best performances of the year, in my opinion. Like John David Washington, this is the first performance of his I've ever seen. I think he's amazing. I think he's absolutely incredible. And of course, the film's so well shot. Like, it's Christopher Nolan. He knows how to shoot scenes. But it's sort of, I can't really describe this film. It kind of feels like a narrative. It kind of felt like the editor and Christopher Nolan didn't really agree in where they wanted the film to go. Like the editor went one way where it's very like cut, 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 cut. Where Christopher Nolan, maybe, I don't know, maybe he wanted to have, maybe he wanted it that way. It remains to be seen. But I think that is counterbalanced with the amazing performances here. Like but it's a hard one. It's a hard line to cross, to be honest.
Yeah, like I agree with you. I don't think there's a performance that I could fault, and I think especially John David Washington gives
He's
like a
so
notably
good,
charismatic
so
performance.
good.
He's fantastic. But yes, I definitely agree with what you're saying about the film, and I just think, for something that you would think is sort of this genre piece, it's actually there's a lot of dialogue, but it's just that 90% of the dialogue is incomprehensible, and it's like the film was written by Christopher Nolan, and it's drivel. So like I think that's maybe where the issue lies, because
Yeah.
we've talked a lot recently about how flashy visuals can't supersede a poorly written
Oh yeah,
script,
yeah, of
and I
course.
just think it's a badly conceived narrative.
Yeah, that's fair enough, buddy. And you know what it is, Callum. You know what it is, man. I kind of feel like this film takes a lot from a lot of different movies, and I think maybe that's why the editing feels so choppy. Like I've mentioned, Edge of Tomorrow and stuff like that. It borrows a lot from that. It borrows a lot from the action and stuff from Inception, and even in my opinion, like borrows a lot from a lot of cliche. spy Liam Neeson films, so like the stereotypical like Russian bad guys. Do you know what I mean by
Yeah,
that? It sort of feels
yeah, I
like
do.
really weird. Like I don't want to give give too much away as to who the villains are, but the stereotypical Russian bad guys, like it didn't feel like it fit this genre, like world defying time travel scenario at all for me. It kind of felt really a mismatch.
Yeah, I don't have much further to say, aside from just the final few points.
Mhm.
Final act, chaotic pile of nonsense. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a bunch of people just running backwards and forwards, to almost no direction in my opinion. Uh, I obviously I don't mean that literally. I just mean it's a mess of just people running across the screen, and I'm like, what's happening? I don't like this.
That's
You know,
fair enough. I
it
respect
was
that, of
it
course.
just wasn't for me.
That's fair.
And
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just feel like this is one of those films that tries to convince you that it's like hyper intelligent so that you feel stupid by not understanding it,
Yeah,
when in
legit.
reality
Yeah.
it's so stupid that a logical person couldn't possibly understand it.
That's fair, man. Of course, like I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. I think you're right. I think from my perspective, the action and the performances they make up for that, in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of this film I love, but like a lot of it I don't want to get into too much for non-spoiler. So that's all the points I have for non-spoiler. If there's any other remarks from you, mate.
No, I have nothing else. So Matthew, my question to you: massive hit or piece of shit?
It's got to be massive hit for me, even though a lot of the stuff I've said is negative. A lot of my positive
Yeah,
points are in the spoiler section. I'm guessing from you, it's not going to be that.
I think for a new review, I think this is maybe only the third time that I will
I
give
think so.
piece of shit.
I know.
You know
I've been
what?
waiting to
What
hear you
else?
say that.
What else has there been? Because there was Toy Story 4, but I can't think of another one. Artemis Fowl was a
Sonic,
piece of
maybe?
shit.
Sonic was, oh no, Sonic was massive hit, I think, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
massive,
Sonic was
massive hit.
massive hit. Sonic's a good film. Uh, yeah, I think it was Artemis Fowl and Toy Story 4. I gave piece of shit, and
Yeah.
Tenet's joining them.
I mean, yeah, of course I respect that, like, I love I love your honesty, and I think you're right. I think you're right for the most part, for me anyway. And like, for me, if I was going to say, like, I've been quite negative about the film, but if I was going to say the positives about the film, I would say this is like this film has some actors who I didn't expect to be good in this environment be really good. And that's like Robert Pattinson. I think he's incredible here. Himish Patel, absolute babe. He's great
Oh yeah,
here. He's really good. He's always good though. He's always good. Kenneth Branagh, solid Russian accent, and I know I've said a lot about the Russian bad guys, but I felt his character like
have
didn't.
we moved into non spoilers at this point?
I think so. I'll be sure to time code. I will
Sorry,
time code just in
sorry.
case for the
Move
viewers.
into spoilers. I mean,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So into spoilers now. Yeah, Matthew, continue.
So like Kenneth Branagh's character, obviously the stereotypical Russian bad guy. I thought his performance was really good. I wasn't a fan of his character, and the film kind of, I don't know if it wants you to feel bad for him because like he still obviously loves his wife, I'd imagine. But I mean, some of the scenes in here like would probably suggest otherwise when he like brutally shoots her and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. There's the villains here, not so good.
My favorite thing about this film, and it's not done on purpose, but it's the only funny thing in the film. It's the in the sort of first half an hour to an hour, before we meet Kenneth Branagh's character Satyr. We sort of get a telling of what the character's like by his estranged wife Kat,
Yeah.
and we see like sort of shots of the back of his head, shots of the side of his head, and I had no idea who was playing him, and then like the music like revs up, and then the camera pans up, and it's just
Kenneth
Kenneth
Branagh. Yeah,
Branagh, and I'm
yeah.
like, why do they think that's a reveal? Like it was like Doctor Strange being the first out of the portal in Avengers Endgame, and then being like, da da, and then it just
Kenneth Branagh's
shows
face.
Kenneth Branagh. I'm like, who gives a fuck?
I actually really
Like,
like Kenneth
no,
Branagh, but not in yeah.
Kenneth Branagh is amazing, but who's thinking like that's a reveal? Like this isn't a pre-existing world, and Kenneth
Exactly.
Branagh isn't like
Yeah.
you know like the biggest movie star in
Exactly.
the
I
world,
know.
but
Yeah.
that's really what I felt like they were trying to rev up to.
Hmm. I feel like the film tries to sort of remain edgy by making John David Washington's character anonymous. I don't know because like he referred to as the protagonist around during the film, and I actually quite like that because it gives him like an air of like, oh, like there's something special about his character, and like it is interesting that it is from his point of view. So credit where credit's due in that. And I suppose like the big reveal regarding his character is that he is the genius behind this time travel mechanism. And I kind of, because obviously this film's a very confusing one, and I was hoping maybe you could shed some light in this. And it sort of seems like the Neil, Robert Pattinson's character, and John David Washington's protagonist, it kind of seems like a Doctor Who River Song scenario where, like, you know, this is the first time uh, the protagonist is interacting with Neil, whereas by the end Neil reveals that he has been interacting with the protagonist in the future for years. So it's sort of like the first time the protagonist knows Neil is the last time he'll see the protagonist. Kind of, is it like that? Is that what it's kind of go
Yeah,
for?
that's the perfect comparison. I think one like sort of crucial detail that I had missed, like entirely, was the key fob around Neil's waist. Because by the third act, I saw that there was a corpse on the floor, and they had opened the gate for them to get through to stop the bomb,
Mm-hmm.
and the person that did that was wearing the red key fob. But that was the first time that I'd seen that. But that had apparently been visible like two times previous to that.
I didn't notice that either.
There had
Actually,
been
that's interesting.
like in the scene where they're at the opera in Kiev. Apparently, I just saw the moment where like he was where the protagonist was nearly shot in the head, and
Mm-hmm.
the bullet is inverted. But I didn't see that inversion was caused by the same person wearing the red key fob.
Yeah,
So it turns out that Robert Pattinson throughout the entire film has been helping John David Washington,
yeah.
which I just didn't know until the end.
But
But
I
I'll be
think though,
honest,
mate.
I really liked the reveal that like they were working from the entire
Yeah.
time, and I think it sort of softened the blow of like if you felt sad about the fact that you knew that Neil was fated to die. I think it makes you feel less sad because you know that the protagonist has a future with him.
Exactly, mate. And I think you're 100% like 100% on that, buddy. But like maybe it is the film's fault that that narrative isn't clear. Like, you know, the fact that like we both missed that, like I don't know if that's just a coincidence or like maybe it was the film's fault that we couldn't see that. Like I don't know if the average audience member would have missed that as well or picked up on that. It's hard to say. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
I
in
yeah.
the final act, like I saw it zoom in, and I was like, that's going to be important. And then as
Mhm.
soon as I saw it on Neil's waist,
Yeah.
it did connect for me. I didn't need them to spell it out or anything.
Yeah. Mhm.
But I just totally missed it in the first scene.
Yeah, and that being said, buddy, I think the time inversion here is a really interesting concept, and one of my favorite scenes in the movie is where we see that Neil and the protagonist are fighting two sort of masked men in the airport, and it's sort of confusing as to who those people are, and it didn't really strike me that that's probably the future version of them later on in the film, and I quite like when they go into the past there and then they fight each other like that's great, and it kind of gives her explanation why like Neil unmasks one of them and lets him go kind of thing, which I thought was really smart. Like the film, obviously the narrative structure we've criticized, but I think the callbacks to previous parts in the film, they're reasonably consistent. So I mean, I thought that was a really really interesting thing.
Yeah, we haven't, we've sort of talked about our issues with the plot, but really, let's just get into some of the questions that I could ask you about sort of how the characters act.
Go for it.
So in the beginning of the film, we sort of see the siege on the opera in Kiev, and honestly, I think it's sort of like a high energy, tense opening, and I think that's something that Nolan's always been good at. The opening scene of
100%.
The Dark Knight is probably one of the best film openers of all time.
Hmm.
But it turns out that you know at least part of this has been constructed as a test for the protagonist by the people in Tenet. Now, just thinking about it, if he's the mastermind behind the operation and he recruited himself, don't know why he had to test himself. That's fine, but whatever.
Yeah, literally.
But also, I
It's a good
really
point.
don't think you know you killing yourself before you're able to be tortured is a indication of loyalty. I think almost anyone would rather die than be tortured. I don't think it says anything about your trustworthiness.
That's true. It kind of reminds me of the scene in the first Kingsman where like they like the way like they put like their like what's his name, Eggsy and stuff on the train tracks, and they're like, tell us what Kingsman is or whatever, and then that, as in they're gonna die and stuff, like that kind of fake torture kind of vibe. It kind of reminded me of that here as well, and it is a really good point. Like he recruiting himself, like he shouldn't require to test himself, and the film, it tries to explain like the one thing that the protagonist sort of says towards the film, towards the start of the film is, I thought cause had to come before effect, and the movie tries to explain that cause before effect isn't as simple as what is maybe believed, but it still confuses me. Like it's hard when like you have such a definitive concept like that, and the film tries to spin it. It's like if a movie tried to spin like gravity or something like that. You know, it's hard with such a like a factual concept to try and manipulate kind of thing. But that's probably my fault as well as a viewer. Like it's not obviously Christopher Nolan's
No,
fault, but do you know what I mean
you
though?
know, well, near the beginning of the film, there's a scientist character named Barbara, and
Mm.
she says to the protagonist, don't try to understand it, which just feels like a baked-in excuse to not bother to make your movie make sense. They talk about like the grandfather paradox, and that that they basically use that logic, to apply that to the
Mm.
destruction of the world, and how he can destroy the world from the past, but not destroy his future, that kind of thing. But also the fact that the protagonist can recruit himself and create Tenet in the future by recruiting himself for an organization that exists in the future but now
Yeah.
exists in the past. And they say, oh, it's the grandfather paradox, which is the concept that if you went into the past to kill your grandfather, then how are you alive in the future to be able to go back to kill your
Kill
grandfather?
them, yeah.
But do you know how paradoxes are created? Bad writing.
That's so true.
If your only
So
cause for
true.
moving the plot forward is to go, oh, you wouldn't understand it, oh, it creates a paradox,
Yeah.
yeah,
Lazy.
that's the indication of a poorly woven narrative.
That's
You
so true.
can
That's a
write
really good point,
you can
mate.
write
That's a really
yourself
good
out of a
point.
paradox. Like plenty of time travel doesn't need to. I mean, you I think they have a solid basis to make the time travel make sense, because they say what's happened has happened, and then they sort of show all the events in the film and the future characters. Like, it's not like an Avengers Endgame where where there was the time stream of events, and then they placed themselves into that and then created new events. Here, what's happened has happened. They see their future selves in their present. That sort of has a good basis for making sense. But then they bring like paradoxes into it, and then they bring stuff from the future into the past, but it
Yeah.
hasn't happened.
Like characters
I
manipulating
I
their
just think
past
it's
selves kind of thing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it had potential, but it
Yeah,
wasn't utilized properly.
that's a question I want to ask you, but like, do you think in the bare bones of this film, with the time traveling version, with the sci-fi stuff, like, do you think this movie has potential? Because I actually think it's still like I love this film, but I think it had the potential to be even better. Like, do you think there's potential there?
Yeah, I like the reveal. I like all the reveals within the film. I like the idea of what's happened has happened, and we are seeing their future versions in the present. That makes that is a good basis, I think, for logical time travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the utilization and the
Mm.
execution. But yeah, I do think the bare bones have potential. I think if they sort of sorted out a bit of the narrative woes in the first two thirds, and then
Hmm.
completely retool the third act, I think it would be quite an enjoyable film.
That's fair enough, buddy. I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't have any more points to say because it's weird. Like for so much that happens in this film, I don't have a lot of remarks to be honest, man. Anything from yourself?
Well, I had a few questions, throughout the film, which actually, to its credit, are answered. I was sort of wondering why anyone would want to reverse the world's entropy, wipe out everything in existence, if that includes yourself. Because usually we talk a lot about people, who want to like take over a planet or destroy a
Mm,
planet
mm,
to sort of, to sort of portray or illustrate their power. But you can't, dominate over a planet that doesn't exist anymore. So
yeah,
that's sort of what I thought was the thing here. But then they explain it by saying that Sator wanted to take the whole world with him because he's dying. But if the agents within Tenet can figure that out, you would think his right hand man, like planting a bomb that's going to blow up the entire, the entire, will like reverse the world's polarity, its entropy,
yeah,
and then in turn destroy all of human existence. You would think they'd maybe question that if they don't have that sort
yeah.
of personal vendetta against the world.
Yeah, like, dude, just hearing you say that, like, it kind of makes me think, like, we've watched this film and we're still confused. Can you imagine if someone is listening to like a review of this film and I was like not seen it? Like, I'd
Yeah,
feel bad for the effects in their brain for that. Like, like I'm still
yeah. I
utterly
mean,
confused.
yeah. I mean, I thought, okay, I'll get through this. I'll ask my questions in my notes. We can talk about this, and then I'll look at Wikipedia. That'll clear things up. I read the Wikipedia, and
It
it
made it
just like,
worse
it,
for me.
well, it didn't make it worse, but they just ignored anything that would confuse anyone. Anything to do with like why anyone would want to do any of this, or motivation,
Mm,
or explanation of the time travel mechanism, was
yeah,
just glossed over.
yeah,
And yeah, it is sort of my biggest issue with the film is it's sort of uh it's like intellectual self-righteousness where, it wants you to be like, because I mean, that's sort of what I've held out on watching like Interstellar. I think Inception isn't as bad an issue, but Interstellar looks like one of those films that is like, oh,
Self-congratulatory.
you don't understand this ridiculous thing. You're a fucking idiot then. And then,
Yeah,
when you discuss
yeah.
people, because I feel like when it comes to films, I feel like, if you're having a discussion with someone about a film and you say the phrase like, I didn't understand it, it didn't make sense, and they're like, oh well, you didn't, or if you say you didn't enjoy a film and someone's like, it's because you didn't understand it. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you're an above average, like if you're above average intelligence and still don't understand it, they probably haven't made it accessible enough for a wide
That's the
audience.
thing.
So
Like if a wide
that's
audience,
the film's fault.
that's the thing, Callum. Like if a wide audience don't understand it, then it's not the fault of the people of the audience. It's the fault of the narrative of the film, isn't it? At the end of the day,
Yeah,
like a time travel one's a tricky one, but like it's weird because you'd sort of think with this being Christopher Nolan's third time travel film, you'd think he'd have the grasp of this by now. And I still really love this film. Like don't get me wrong, I love it, but like it's weird because time travel. This is his third. This is like his hat trick of time travel films, and this one's the most
but
confusing of the lot.
what are the three, Matthew?
Well, I think I think Interstellar is definitely one of them for me.
Yeah,
It's not it's more space, but granted there's time travel elements. Inception, I'm not 100% sure if it has got time travel, but from the
it's
from
about like traveling into
dreams,
dreams. Yeah,
yeah,
so I don't think there's any time stuff.
but yeah, it's weird because like the thing about Christopher Nolan, I suppose, is that he's one of my favorite directors, but I think the complex narrative doesn't all in his films doesn't always help him, which is weird because it's never something I really found that was that obvious or apparent in the Dark Knight trilogy. Like they're pretty bog standard sort of start, middle, end kind of films, for the most part anyway. So it's weird because I haven't seen Dunkirk either. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I don't know how he can like, do something like exceptionally weird with
Mm.
the historical piece. He's
Yeah.
not Quentin Tarantino.
Tarantino, yeah. Um, that being said, there's a lot about this film I absolutely love, and it actually blew me away that John David Washington is Denzel's kid, which is cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
Uh
was I thought
yeah,
I didn't know that.
I thought he was fantastic in the film, but he did not save it for me,
That's fair. I respect
unfortunately.
that. Is any oh,
And
go
I,
ahead.
I I reject to call this a complex film because I think the issue is that it has nothing about it. Like a complex thing, I would think, has multiple layers, is convoluted, and something with a second viewing you can make sense of. A Knives
Fair
Out,
enough. Fair
perhaps.
enough.
I would call complex. I would call this ridiculous, nonsense,
I mean, I
terrible.
respect that. No, that's
You know,
fair.
all
That's
these
fair, man.
adjectives. You
That's
know,
fair. That's fair.
and I'm gonna put a ruling. I'm never gonna watch this film again, and I don't usually say that,
One time
but
watch.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna put myself through that again.
If you're gonna give it a score out of 10, buddy, I know we don't always do this for new releases, but I think this is a film that's maybe it's divided maybe a lot of people. It's divided us too as well. So I'm interested to hear your rating for this one. What would you give it?
Okay, I'm gonna split it into enjoyment and quality.
Nice
For
one.
enjoyment, I'm gonna give it a generous 3, and that's all John David Washington and Robert Pattinson. A little sprinkling of Aaron Taylor Johnson, because
Yeah,
I love
yeah. It didn't look
Aaron
like
Taylor
him at
Johnson.
all, did it? It didn't really look like him.
No, yeah, he doesn't usually have sort of like the shaved sides with a big beard. I thought he looked cool.
He
It,
did
like
look cool.
he
True
sort of did
Geordie,
feel like
yes.
an army guy. Like he was the most convincing sort of combat person. Because
Absolutely.
Robert Pattinson seems sort of like too like pretty and pristine.
Pretty
I
boy,
like
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced of him as Batman. But sort of I suppose that's the point of Bruce Wayne, that he's sort of like a unassuming like playboy.
Yeah.
But John David Washington, I don't know. Whenever he was like beating up like the 8 guys in the kitchen, I was a bit like, I don't know if I'm convinced about this.
Hmm.
Because
Fair
there
enough.
wasn't like enough finesse to the fighting. It was more just brawler, and I don't know whether he had sort of the physique to convince me of that.
Especially when you
Uh,
see him against like that actress who plays Sator's wife. Is it like Elizabeth Debicki or something? Is her name?
yeah. Are
She's like,
talking, I wasn't referencing height, but if you want to go
no, I
there,
was gonna say like that, like John David Washington when he's not near her, like looks like a really buff guy, but like she must be at like 6'2" or something. She's so tall.
yeah, she is really tall. She also played. Do you remember?
The Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
Aisha.
that's it. That's it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought she looked familiar, but no.
So
Yeah.
for enjoyment, a 3 out of 10, and that's for the actors and nothing else. And for quality, do I go lower or
Oh no,
higher?
you lower.
I was like, I don't know. Like,
Oh no, this is a
well, I
real
mean,
stinker.
Matthew, like it's almost unprecedented. Like a piece of shit rating on this show is almost unprecedented.
Unprecedented. Yeah.
You know,
Oh
because
god.
I even think like when it comes to the Dark Knight trilogy, I have my issues and I think they're overrated, but I don't think any of them are bad films. I just don't
Yeah.
think they're perfect or exceptional. But I have almost no issues with them. So whenever we rate those, I'll be rating them favorably. But here, I just don't know. Like, it's not like I have a personal gripe with Christopher Nolan because I will be rating the Dark Knight trilogy fairly, I think. But enjoyment is definitely like a 2 or 3, but I'll give it a generous 3 for the actors. Quality, it's just one of the biggest messes of like narrative construction I've ever seen. I mean, I sound like I feel like when a film is this wanky and like pseudo intelligent, you sort of have to be like wanky with your terminology, like
No,
oh
I don't think you're
narrative,
being like that.
it's
I think you're being fair. I think you're being
you
fair.
know
If that's how you feel,
people
you go for
people
it.
sort of don't like movie reviewers, because they sort of like try to pick holes and everything. But I always go in and I want to enjoy a film,
Mm.
and I would say most of the time I either love a film or I'm like meh. It's rare that I'm like I hated that, but
Hmm.
I hated this. Quality, I'm gonna give it a 4.
That's fair. No,
I
that's
think
fair,
that's
man.
generous
I
in
think
my
that
opinion,
I mean,
honestly.
if that's how you feel, you gotta be honest. So I love that. For me, I'm a big fan of the action here. It's probably one of my favorite sort of alternative style action that I've seen. Love the performances. I'd love to see John David Washington in more things. And for me, I think it's an 8.5. I obviously can see there's a lot that needs work in here. But that being said, I had a good time with it. But it's no, mate, I don't think you're being overly negative because, like as you said, I think we struggled to think of any other pieces of shit ratings that you'd given.
Yeah,
So I mean, like,
we haven't disagreed this massively since like the Many Adventures of Winnie the
Winnie
Pooh.
the Pooh. What a masterpiece that was. But no, thanks very much for everyone listening to this. And just before we finish today's mini overdue review, whatever I'll call this, we have a few podcasts coming up shortly, which I'm going to pass over to Callum to say what we're going to be talking about in the next week or two.
So tomorrow we will be recording a podcast about classic Christmas films. And by classic, we don't mean good, we mean old. We're going to be talking
Old.
about It's a Wonderful Life, and I hope I said this to you, but like the 1930s version of Miracle on 34th Street. I
Yeah,
hope you haven't watched. I hope you haven't watched the one with Matilda in it.
no,
You
no, I
know.
watched the OG, the OG.
Okay, cool. I
I
haven't
was gonna
watched either of
message
them
you
yet,
about that. I was
but
like,
we're recording that. We're recording that tomorrow, and then next week, I assume if we're planning to record on Christmas Eve, which I
Christmas
imagine
Day. We
would
go
be
up there on Christmas Day as well. That'd be awesome.
if you think you can get any of them up by Christmas Day, I have massive respect for that. But if you
100%.
can't,
Oh,
not an issue.
no, 100%. Gotta get up for
So
Christmas Day.
we'll be talking about our favorite Christmas films, and if you want to hear what those are, I would say tune in to that. I
Exactly.
I
There's
think we'll
some
leave that for the moment.
good ones.
We'll also be talking about in advance of We Can Be Heroes, the revolutionary sequel to Shark Boy and Lava Girl. We will be talking about the cult favorite original Shark Boy and Lava Girl,
Absolutely.
and finally, Matthew recently has seen Wonder Woman 1984, the first time either of us has been to the cinema in a
Oh,
long
it was a
time.
long time, yeah.
Since we saw, was which one was more recent? Was it Birds of Prey or Sonic the Hedgehog?
I think they must have
I
been
think it
within
was
a
Sonic
couple
the
weeks of
Hedgehog.
each other. They were very
Yeah,
close together, but I think it was Sonic. I think it was Sonic.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Wonder Woman 1984, but I will be seeing it on Monday in advance of the recording. So we'll be
Can't
getting
wait.
a lot of content out to you very
100%.
soon. And
Absolutely.
then following that, there's obviously a couple of releases coming in around that time. On Christmas Day itself, Soul is coming out. We Can Be Heroes is coming out. So we'll be getting mini reviews to you guys as soon as we can after those releases.
Absolutely. And then, of course, following on from Rocky films, we're going to be doing Creed. We're going to be doing, I think we're going to be doing like obviously Disney. We're doing the Disney films as well, and of course the live action Mulan. We'll probably get around to that as well. But we've sort of, I'm actually proud of us, mate, because we we've sort of we've for me anyway, we've covered a lot of the big films that we missed. Really, like the only one that is missing really from that list is Mulan, and you know, Wonder Woman. Of course, Wonder Woman 84 hasn't really came out yet in a lot of countries. So um, yeah, it's been a fun day today. I always like getting into wee chat with you about films that we have different views on, because it makes for a good discussion as well. So pleasure recording with today, buddy. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone's time
Thank you.
watching this, and yeah, as always, email is in the description below, and time codes as well if you want to, have a look around there, because I was aware I jumped into spoilers quite quickly. So yeah, time codes will be there. Hope you guys are all safe and well. Hope your families are all safe and well. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.
Bye bye.